AfterBuzz TV, starting place to the likes of WWE female superstars Kathy Kelly, Sonya Deville, and Zelina Vega proudly presents Women's Wrestling Weekly, the world's first podcast and YouTube series dedicated exclusively to women's wrestling, featuring all the latest news as well as interviews with top superstars in the industry. And now, AfterBuzz TV's own gorgeous lady of wrestling, TK Trinidad.
Bonjour, you're watching Women's Wrestling Weekly, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. My name is TK Trinidad, aka the Canadian Assassin, and with me we have some very special co-hosts. They're joining in live and direct. He is from Kings County, from Kenya.
Kings County, New York, not Kenya.
Yeah, that too. Please welcome Bobito.com.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks so much for having me here.
She's not really from Kenya. And she hails from the valley, the very hot valley where there's fire. She's safe, thank goodness. The cows are good. Please welcome the farmer's daughter, Emily Mae.
Hi, everyone.
She's not the farmer's daughter either, but you know, that's how we do.
I could go farming.
I don't think so. We have an amazing show. We have Star of the Week, but it's all about our guests, our amazing guests who are wrestlers, and they're female, and they're badasses. She is the queen of crazy. Her quote, not mine. The first lady of Lego, Canada's very own. Please welcome Addy Starr.
Hey, guys.
Hey. I'm always excited when we have Canadians on the show because I'm completely
you
biased.
Look excited, yeah.
I'm just, you know.
You're beaming.
It's just how we do. So, Addy, talk to us. Thank you for coming on the show. My first question is, you know, we have a lot of Canadian wrestlers that I've taken note of. Is there, you hear like a strong style, a British style, Japanese style, even like lucha. Is there like a Canadian style of wrestling?
I mean, I would say in a way, yeah. I think Canada's kind of always been left behind a little bit in terms of wrestling.
Tell me about it.
We always get forgotten about for some reason. But if you really think about it, like Bret Hart and the Hart Dungeon is some pretty like intense, tough wrestling that's going on. And if you think about some of the Canadian wrestlers that are around right now, like Josh Alexander, me, I mean, if I do this, we're tough. So I think it's just people that are trying to prove themselves and show that we really have a place in wrestling.
So I kind of feel like what people don't realize, it's true. It's like hockey and wrestling. What I've noticed, like just doing research and interviewing a lot of different folks, is like we have hockey wrestlers and then, you know, we have actors sprinkled in that. Yeah. But people don't know, like, we're nice, but then we also kick you in your face.
Yeah, what's up with that? Everything but combat, we're just down for it. Yeah.
Just what happens. So tell us how you got into wrestling. You've been wrestling for a bit.
Yeah, I've been wrestling for 13 years. So I kind of started right after high school. I actually played hockey and I was really looking for something else athletic to do, something else that could, scratch that athletic itch that I had. And then someone who I knew who was a wrestler asked me to come to training, and they had no women at all at the time. So my trainer said, hey, you're actually not terrible. So can you stay? And I will have you on my shows, but we just really need more women. So I got basically begged to stay. Mm-hmm. And then there were a few other really amazing women who were training, who had already trained, who I got to wrestle. And they just made me love every part of it. And they were so inspirational. So I decided to keep doing it.
Nice. Now, as far as matches, you've been wrestling, you know, for 13 years. Is there anybody that you want to have matches with? That you haven't had matches with yet?
Ooh, I mean, I just recently ticked off a bucket list. I'd been wanting to wrestle Nick Gage for like the longest time. There's a whole 10-year story behind it. And I finally just this past weekend got to wrestle Nick Gage one-on-one, which was horrible and amazing all at the same time. So I think my kind of next step is going to be some of the higher up women who I have a ton of respect for. Lufisto comes to mind as one of the top people because her and I, again, both Canadian, but somehow we have never wrestled, which I find really strange. And I think that we would have a really tough, insane match. And I really hope someone will do it before, you know, she finishes up with wrestling.
Absolutely. I just want to make a statement up front and say I always pop for Northern Light suplexes. Doesn't matter who does them. I just love Northern Light suplexes. They're my favorite suplexes of all time. We're going to talk about your match history in just a moment. But before we do, I want to ask a question about the mental side of it. How do you prepare for some of the more intense matches you performed in your career, even before you even get out there?
I mean, it's one of those things where I realize it will be over at some point. And so I kind of have this thought going into it that I'm just going to go out there, I'm going to do what I need to do, and then, 20 minutes later, it's done. So I never have this feeling of like permanence about my matches. It's kind of how I really approached a lot of like death matches too, especially because I know death matches are going to be horrible and they're going to hurt, but I know that there's only a certain amount of time that I'm going to have to really feel that horrible pain that I have. So I kind of approach it that way in the sense that it will be over and it will be amazing when it's done and people will be really happy about it when it's done.
Oh man, I mean, I watched kind of your Lego death matches, and that that hurt me just watching it.
Yeah, the Lego matches are pretty crazy because it's one of those things that everyone understands. Everyone has stepped on a Lego. Everyone knows what it feels like. So whereas a lot of death matches that I've done with like light tubes and barbed wire and thumbtacks, some people would never know what that feels like. When you watch someone get slammed on a huge pile of Lego, you know what that feels like, and it sucks.
Totally. If you babysit any like 4-year-olds.
So, I mean, why?
Yeah, exactly. Why?
I understand the craft.
Question.
I know, I understand the craft, and I respect it. But, like, do you volunteer for this, or is this something that you want to do, or, like, how did this come about?
So, the first wrestling I ever watched was deathmatch wrestling, because I was not a wrestling fan growing up. I always make that really clear. I was introduced to it way later on in my life. So the first wrestling I ever watched was the IWA 1995 Japan King of the Death match. With,
oh my gosh. I used to start off with like the straight chaser.
So imagine seeing that as your first ever thing in wrestling and thinking like, oh, this is what wrestling is. So I did a death match when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
It was like barbed wire, spider webs, and all this other crazy stuff. And to me, it just became really normal. And to me, that was like, oh, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I should do in wrestling. So I kind of just kept going. And then it actually became this really kind of like sick game of like, how far can I take it? Like, how much more can I do? And so the Legos just became this new kind of like creative way I could do death matches and freak people out and put myself through terrible amounts of pain.
Wow.
Okay, then.
Oh man.
Now, do you think there is definitely an art to it? Because obviously you're sitting here with us. You appear everything is intact and whole. Do you think this should be on television more often?
I mean, I think it has a place and a time, and moderation is really important. I've had a lot of people ask to book me in death matches without any kind of reason behind it or any kind of build up to it, and I think it kind of cheapens the sort of effect of what a death match or what hardcore wrestling is supposed to be. It's supposed to be shocking. It's supposed to be something really, really different. So if it was on TV all the time, it wouldn't really have the same impact as it does now. But the way that it is now, where we're not seeing that much kind of, blood and gore and all that stuff, when we do see it, like when we have, Joey Janela doing a death match with Jon Moxley, or seeing Goldust like bleeding all over the place, we feel a lot more towards it than we normally would. So I think it's really about doing it in moderation and tastefully, in a way that will create that kind of effect on the audience that we want. Now,
the blood part. How does that? So the blood part is like a lot of bodily fluids. Is there a process before the match as far as safety? That's kind of why I'm asking.
I mean, yeah. When I was doing death matches sort of more regularly, I was getting tested a lot. And whenever you worked for any sort of bigger deathmatch companies, they would ask for proof that you had been tested and all these things. So I think safety is actually shockingly important compared to what you would really expect. I mean, there were all those scares, especially around, people who had Hep C, I think was one of the big things going on. And when we in the deathmatch community heard about it, we all were like, whoa, like, we're not putting ourselves in that kind of risk. Like, if you get open, we can stitch it up, but you can't fix like a disease like that. So it is a huge part of it. And we want everyone at the end of the day to go home to their families and be safe.
And now, is it controlled? Meaning that, I can say this because I can't remember these. Anyways, I was on X-Pac's show, and he mentioned that like they kind of do like a small cut in order for the bleeding to start. Is that something that still happens today, or is that more of an old school thing?
It does happen. I'm terrible at it. Like, I can't bleed to save my life. I don't know why. So it does still happen, but mostly within specific people who that's what they have always done. Okay. I find when I wrestle, because if you really think about it, I'm not wearing as much clothing as a lot of the guy deathmatch wrestlers are. So I bleed from everywhere else, and I don't really need to bleed from my face because it's already pretty bloody.
Yeah, when you're crafting a match and thinking of these death matches, do you how do you balance the storytelling? Again, you talked about the build-up, but the match itself, when you're balancing the storytelling and kind of the gore and the tough stuff, the stuff that's going to hurt you, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to... It's important to remember that if you do it all at one time, it's not going to have any effect. It's kind of like when you're reading a book or watching a movie. Like, if everything happens right away, you don't care about what happens after that. I have an English degree, so I always think about it like as like writing a story and like how I would be interested in a story and a plot. So it's about these kind of like punctuating moments where you're bringing people back in and bringing them back to that match and reminding them that, oh my God, this is actually happening. And this is actually really, really violent and really, really painful. But at the same time, you're still kind of reminding them that it is a wrestling match. We're not dying in front of you. Everything's going to be okay. So it's just balance.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you after a match. You as a performer recovering, right? So sound, body, and mind. Your days off. Like, is there any tips or tricks you do to get flat or make sure your muscles recover, or just to get yourself in a good mental space?
I give one piece of advice, which is don't be a teacher, which is what I do during the week most of the time.
Oh wow! What grade?
I teach high school. I taught high school. I'm currently not, which is probably a good thing. But I taught high school for the last 7 years. So I was like on my feet constantly all day.
None of my
running
high school
around.
teachers looked like you.
You look like a really cool high school teacher.
No one ever believes when I tell them that. But yeah, so I was a high school English teacher, and I remember.
In Guelph, or what part of Canada?
I was actually living in the UK for 6 years and was teaching over there.
Nice.
And some of the kids knew, so they used to ask me sometimes on Monday how I was feeling, and it was kind of funny. If they ever saw like the Lego matches, they would ask to see the cuts and things. But I know for a fact that like that was probably one of the worst things I can do. Like you need time off, which is why the people that do this job, multiple times a week, I have nothing but respect for them. And I have no idea how some of them get out of bed every day. I just recently went and saw a physiotherapist for the first time ever in my life, and the first thing he said was, you need to stop wrestling forever. So I don't go to a physiotherapist anymore because...
So what does your future look like? What are you hoping career-wise?
I mean, I've always been very clear that this is not something that I want to do full-time forever. Because I know myself in terms of how much I'm a homebody, and I like to stay, in my bed sometimes and chill out and not have to travel all the time. So I think I've got a couple big goals that I want to accomplish. Like going to Japan is still probably my number one thing that I want to do. Hopefully doing death matches in like Big Japan or something.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of time left in me because I did take a break and came back with kind of this new lease on wrestling, and made it really sort of about what I wanted to accomplish rather than what most people expect you to want to accomplish. So I don't know. The future, it's not set out. It's more just like, I'm going to have a lot of fun, and until it stops being fun, I'm just going to do whatever I want.
All right, so we're going to hit rapid hot tags real quick.
Wrestling Rapid Hot Tag.
So I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to say the first thing that comes to your mind. So always early or always late?
Always early.
Last person you text?
My boyfriend.
What is the one thing that you love about yourself?
My creativity in writing.
A celeb you would like to meet?
Gwen Stefani.
Well, let's go on. Last show you binge watched?
Breaking Bad, I think.
Oh, that's pretty kind of sort of recent. If you were on a death row, what would be your last meal?
Oh my God, breakfast burrito.
Oh, good. That's a good choice.
If you could listen to one album for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Every Time I Die, Hot Damn.
There you go. Ooh. And who would you have, if you could have one last death match, who would it be against?
Cactus Jack in 1995.
Boom.
Oh.
There you have it. See, simple. I mean, way more simple than being in a death match. I know that for sure. Everything's intact. Thank you so much for hopping on the show. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Addy Starr, on Instagram at Addy Stars and Stripes, and on Facebook as Addy Starr.
And now 2020 is coming up. Any big goals or plans that you have for 2020 for your wrestling career?
I mean, I've been in talks with some people in England and maybe go back and see some friends.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to see Addy Starr on the rise, like a rising star.
Rising star.
Yeah, but
People already do that all the time. I know, right? Thank you so much for hopping on the show. Like I said, I am always about the Canadian, so I'm extra, extra happy. So, it is what it is.
Well, yeah.
Favoritism.
It's Canadian, Northern Lights suplex. It makes sense. It all makes sense.
There you have it. So thank you so much for hopping on the show. But we are going to move on. We're going to do a Star of the Week real quick, where Flobo's going to run it and do a costume
fast.
change into a white room and do the Star of the Week for us.
Quick session.
Call me the Flash. Shout out to Stephen Lemieux. Told me to write out the scripts.
Okay.
Hey, it's Flobo, and now it's time for your Star of the Week. Now, you can't talk about women's professional wrestling in 2019 without talking about Becky Lynch. Born Rebecca Quinn on January 30th, 1987, Lynch has had a phenomenal year, making headlines inside and outside the ring. Whether it's being one of the first women to headline WrestleMania along with Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey, or appearing as the first female superstar on the cover of the WWE 2K video game, Lynch has come a long way from her steampunk days as the Irish Lass Kicker. And who can forget Becky Two Belts? If this is her 2019, who knows what 2020 has in store? Because of this, Becky Lynch is our Star of the Week. I was dropping ad-libs like a rapper, right? Yeah, shout out to Stephen Lemieux.
Shouts out, definitely shout out to Steve Lemieux. He's the one who does, he's been doing the graphics for Women's Wrestling Weekly from the inception. So shout out to him. Shout out to Ryan in the booth. He's putting up with, there's a lot of moving parts on the show. And I'm sure Ryan's lost some hair. He still has a full head of hair, but I'm sure he's lost some hair in the process. He's still rugged. If he wasn't as nice, he probably would have cussed me out a couple times. So definitely shout out to Ryan. Other than that, where can people find you guys?
You can find me over on Twitter at FloboBoys or Instagram at Flobita, and of course Flobita.com, which TK visits almost every day.
It's true. I watch her. Go on. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Emily Mae Heller.
And thank you guys for watching the show. Without you guys, we wouldn't be the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. If you are not watching us, or if you are watching us on YouTube on AfterBuzz and Sports, make sure to hit that subscribe button. iTunes, Spotify, all those other podcast platforms. Definitely leave us a comment and likes, because we definitely need that in order to grow and get bigger celebrities and bigger stars and all that good stuff for 2020. Also follow us on Instagram at WPW Weekly on Instagram and Twitter, and you can follow me on everything at TK Trinidad. Till next week, guys. Ciao.
From executive producer Kevin Undergaro, producer TK Trinidad, and me, Maria Menounos, we would like to thank you for tuning in to Women's Wrestling Weekly. To help TK, the crew, and women's wrestling in general, we ask that you subscribe, rate, and comment on Women's Wrestling Weekly at Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our AfterBuzz TV wrestling channel on YouTube for this and other outstanding wrestling content. Buzz you later!